Dad. Very excited that you and I get to kickstart this podcast series together. It was a really fun idea. I think we were just over our kitchen table or something, chit-chatting about podcasts, although it was supposed to be with you and Frank, my husband, in the beginning, and not me, and probably would have been a more hilarious show with him on it and all of his opinions that he has. But I'm looking forward to sharing with the world all your insights, even though you've now retired. I'm sure everybody still wants to hear from you too, and how we can blend that into business strategy and marketing strategy.
Yeah, it has been interesting to be retired and still being, my mind is so still engaged with all of this because business leaders need to know the reality because there's not a lot of reality out there in the headlines or in the quick notes or anything like that. I mean, ITR's by the numbers does a nice job of that, but we're going to take a little further into the application, into the leadership aspect of it rather than just the straight answer to the headline question. But I like what they do. I don't want to in any way take anything away from what they do. Smart people. I think the big thing, Kim, is the GDP number was negative for the first quarter, and you could almost hear the entire business community go, and I was heading out the door, but I'm sure a lot of our clients or ITR's clients are going because we told them that wasn't going to happen, and it's mind-boggling. And there, now that I'm free from the before, the one reason for that is Donald Trump's talk about tariffs. I mean, he started talking about tariffs, then he went over the edge with tariffs. We're going to put 140% tariffs on Chinese goods, and we're going to tariff everybody in sight, and it was just enough to drive investors, which is not the economy, but CEOs and business leaders to just go, stop. What's happening here? And until they could find out what was happening, they froze in place. You and I can talk about, and I hope we do, why that's not a good idea to stop in place. But it is, for us at least, it's certainly understandable. You don't know if the world's falling apart. It's hard to know which step to make. And prior to that, a lot of business leaders had gone to what I would call a slow walk. They were uncertain, they weren't sure, so they just slowed all business decisions down. Also, not a great plan when you are working a plan is to just delay the timeline and not follow through. We can get back to that, but what happened with the first quarter was interesting because I already said it's all Donald Trump's fault because it is. The first quarter saw tariffs uh, spike. I mean, just like we haven't seen, I don't know if we've seen that much before in terms of dollars. But an increase in imports is a minus to GDP. It lowers GDP. So while we had increases from consumerism, we had increases from business investment, we had a much less increase from government because of Doge, we had a really large negative from imports and a slight positive from exports, but not as much as it should have been. Uh, that large export number and the Clark Bellin at Bellwether put a number to it, and I think he's right, is it 5 percentage point decline in GDP caused by that alone. So to end up at minus 0.3 means there are some pretty good things going right to end up with a minus 0.3, which is an annualized number, which we don't need to get into. All of that is probably a long way to say the fundamentals that distributors, manufacturers, and service firms care about are still going in the right direction. It's this great uncertainty about what on earth is going to happen to the global economy. Since then, things have calmed down some, and the pendulum may yet swing in the other direction. But now we're talking about minimum reciprocal tariffs of 10%, and we're keeping our eyes on you and our eyes on you. Now we're talking about being friends with Iran. I mean, it's still an unsteady, uncertain world that we're living in. But with GDP understandably negative, the stock market coming back, the consumer still spending, businesses still investing, I think you and I have uh, a way to help leaders see that the future is going to be up, the economy will be expanding, and there are steps to be taken. to take maximum advantage of that. Leading indicators are good, and I'm happy to say that the investment world is feeling pretty good at the moment, and as opposed to holding all cash. And one of the risks we ran into at the risk of going way off stream is that we could have seen the world walk away from the dollar. And if the world walked away from the dollar, that causes a heck of a lot of inflation, which causes an incredible rise in interest rates. So all this talk about bringing business back to the United States could have tanked the economy like there's no tomorrow if the investors around the world and governments and central banks around the world had said, we're going to put our money elsewhere for now because you guys seem like you're loony. And we dodged that bullet, which was a good thing. Over the years, I've talked about the secret weapon that China has. They're the second largest holder of foreign debt, U.S. foreign debt, which is not the major portion, but it is enough to cause exactly what I just said. If they caused a run on the dollar, like we saw a run on other currencies in the past, that would have a significant event in our economy. That's the type of thing we watch for, you and I, and we will help people as we go forward. But right now, it's calmed down, so it's time to move forward and help people do exactly that. And I liked your recent blog, Kim. All
Thank
eight.
you.
You're welcome. All 8 points. I think the one that resonated the most with me because of the pessimism is time to lead with optimism. I don't know if you want to expand upon that or what, but that one seemed to me the beginning.
Agreed. Agreed. I think maybe before we even dive into some of the ways to combat the potential emotional state that business leaders may be in. I'm sure an assumption of mine is that a lot of the people joining the show want to hear as much as they possibly can from Alan Beaulieu. You have quite the, as I've always called them the last 14 years, your cult following that follow you around. And it's been a while since they've probably heard from you. When was your last presentation? Was that back in February? March?
It was March
March.
25th, I think, out
All
in
right.
Scottsdale. Scottsdale. It says in RV.
Yeah, with the driverless car.
That's right. The Whammo Whammo, whatever it was lots of fun. Yeah,
Yeah, or terrifying. I would qualify it as terrifying, but fun, I guess.
I enjoyed it. Uh, yeah, it has been a little while since I've been on a stage, and I have not missed the travel and the stage. What I've missed is the interaction with people. So I'm really glad that we get a chance to do this. Is this going to be a place where people have questions that they can send in and we can deal with it that way and help them that way too?
Yes. And so to anybody listening, please, as we go through this, as questions arise, send in messages. I will stay diligent with any of the comments. We'd love to hear from everybody, and we'll be sure to get back either individually or address it in future episodes as well. So most definitely, this is meant to be a forum for communication, not just a one-way direction of information.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, that's what resonates with us both over the years is that that's what's core to us, one of our passions. So good. We get to continue to do that.
Agreed. Agreed. All right. So before we switch gears into the how to combat some of the situations that we find ourselves in, whether that's emotionally or actual with challenges that are presenting themselves around us, I was just curious if you had to list what you would see as the biggest three challenges that businesses are going to be facing or are facing right now, how would you list them? And then what advice would you give to our listeners for each of them?
Well, not necessarily in order, but the first one that came to mind is the labor situation, which has been tight for years, and in the last couple has only gotten much tighter. It's only going to get much tighter because of current policy. And let's do this in a way that doesn't try to bring a moral value to immigration, legal or otherwise. Let's just deal with the fact. 13% of all construction workers are what is politely called undocumented workers, illegal immigrants is the more technically correct term. So the fact that 13% of the workforce has been diminished is a big deal to contractors who are struggling to find people. I was just talking to somebody the other day, yesterday, as a matter of fact, that soon, I just forget things, where there's a company here in New Hampshire that doesn't need a lot of workers. But when it does need workers, maybe just a half dozen, it can't find them. So if a half dozen people retire over the course of a few months or get sick or hurt or whatever, all of a sudden they're hurting for certain because it's not a sexy industry and it's really tough to, that labor problem's not going to go away. And we've talked before, the ways to deal with that is culture, certainly. And I think this speaks to our, both of us, our belief in how management as human beings should treat other human beings really well, but also if you want to be a good leader, treat your people like they're special and they are part of everything and not just the ants on the hill. And when you do that, you can start to attract people. The state of New Hampshire, if I can do that, you can edit it out if I can't. I'm a board member for SWIB, State Workforce Innovation Board, is very in tune to this, and we're working to find ways to train people and attract people so that, and every state does this. And so the government is trying to help, but I have learned firsthand this is driven by business, the needs of business and the involvement of business, the voice of business. So that's why maybe it strikes me as number one. Number two is going to be certainly still the uncertainty in the world caused by tariffs and such. And number three will be somewhat related to Doge, and this may be more state to federal, but I just learned also that the Department of Labor in Boston, which was a district kind of office, they're all gone. Now, that impacts business because the DOL impacts, works with business and impacts states. And so the things behind the scenes that we don't see have been impacted, will continue to be impacted, which may cause states to have to step up, which causes state taxes to rise. So under the guise of cutting federal spending, all of a sudden business taxes within the state, which New Hampshire, we tout ourselves as being tax-free. We're not. Businesses pay taxes. Can all of a sudden, if the legislature votes it, covering federal cutbacks, all of a sudden businesses are paying more taxes here instead of over there. And it's like, so what did I win? You know? I think those are big things. The uncertainty, the potential tax increases, despite what's being talked about, and the lack of labor are the big items. It's not whether products will come into this country. Products will come into this country. And we're going to find businesses still continue to come back to this country. We're going to find innovation. We're going to find education. We're going to find those things continue on. I guess if I could have a fourth, it's the battle brewing with universities and the administration.
Mm.
Uh, Unhealthy relationship in that it tells potential students don't come here. And it tells foreign students, in particular, don't come here. And we don't pay enough attention as a country to the benefit that there is of foreign students coming here. A lot of them add a lot to our business environment later on, a lot to our community later on. And even if they don't stay, they go back friends. You know, I had a great time in Boston. Those people they're good people. You know, and that type of attitude exists. It's like foreign exchange students going to Italy, they come back to the United States and go, they're not crazy, they're just fun loving. You know, those are some of the risks that I see. But all of that means business goes on and profits can be had and plans can be made.
Most definitely. So in light of those different risks, what advice would you give to if I was a business, well, I am, haha, I'm a business owner and concerned about these things and how they may or may not be impacting me. And I have the benefit of being able just to call you on your cell as my dad whenever I have these types of questions, but we'll pretend we don't have those conversations and we can share with the world what types of advice you may give me if when I do make that call.
Sure, and people instead of calling can send in a question, and we'll be happy to do that. So I'm all in favor of that. But on the labor front, it's not terribly innovative. It's called innovation, and it's AI, and it's efficiency gains. And Brian and I wrote a book on that, Make Your Move, which you don't need to read the book. It's on the website at ITR for the most part, and a lot of the information you need there. But it's about, you know, if you are looking at your business, what can you do better, faster, cheaper? That's first. But most businesses forget step two, which is what should you stop doing? You and I used to have these talks all the time about what should we stop? We are wasting time doing this. It makes no money. It is just something that is in the culture. It's in the business. It's usually pushed off to the masses as, or to the people in the company, I should say, as a this is how people identify with us, and this is our Victrola puppy dog on you know, it's just how people see us. And we called it in the book, you know, a dog. You got to take the dog out for a walk. You got to take it and find it a new home. It doesn't belong in your business anymore. And stop wasting time doing things that you shouldn't do. You don't do well. You don't do efficiently, and your competitors do better than you. Stop doing those things. And our good friend you and I share with Strategex, you know, the Philippines, they're excellent at helping companies with that. The 80-20 rule, which sounds simple, but when they apply it, it really increases the efficiencies and profitability of businesses in very clear steps. It's not just this vague concept. It's do this, do this, do this. We'll help you do that. And next thing you know, you are just reborn into this extremely profitable, well-aligned company. That's what businesses need. That takes care of all the things we were talking about when you have that kind of mindset going forward. And you also find if you do that, you can raise prices uh, because you are so focused. I was at a presentation the other day where an accounting firm was making a presentation. And that sounds pretty boring, right? Accounting firm making a presentation. Let's rate that with watching grass grow, okay? This guy was actually very good because in the forum, the board I'm on for this particular company, this CPA firm does only that industry. And so they knew answers to questions that hadn't been asked yet. They were specialized enough in this field that they could serve all the different needs in the field. They understood it so well. What an advantage that is. So as firms that are in professional services can go, yeah, we provide staffing for 100 different industries, that's one thing. As long as you have somebody or a group of people who go, we're really good specialists here, we're really good specialists there. And if you don't have hundreds of people or dozens of people, you better be able to say, we're really good at providing staffing for engineering firms or for marketing firms or software development firms where you understand the ins and outs, because a generalist is fine for your doctor, but is not the one who's going to do the surgery. And you need to have that kind of focus, I think.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I remember somebody telling you and I that a couple of years back about being more specialized and how that was an up and coming trend. And it certainly has developed, and we've watched that need continue to grow over those years as well. I'm dialing back a couple of things that you said. I was taking notes.
Oh,
So for the labor and the hiring, recently I was talking to somebody about core values, your passion, your purpose, your cause, your mission, and using, like, documenting those things and using them as part of your hiring process, and how that really helps weed out some of the candidates that on paper and skill set look really great, but they might not be the right cultural fit for the business, which has a higher rate of turnover in the end and is more costly in the end. And then you had also mentioned AI. I was speaking with somebody else recently and they were explaining their processes. And so I explained, well, actually, ChatGPT can do XYZ, and you can link it to Zapier, which has API calls between that and your CRM system, and it can streamline everything that you just said, because they're talking about the same thing. I feel like I need to hire, labor market is so tight, not sure what to do. And so we just started talking about all these different techniques. And just as recent as today, spoke with this person, and it was like his mind was blown. He's like, this is amazing. This solved everything that I had originally come to you with. So just a use case example of everything that you just said, using the technology and your company's culture to help in your hiring process, or you maybe not even needing to hire in the end because you've created such more efficient processes.
absolutely. And I believe in the hiring process, we have a tendency to do the technical analysis well in the hiring process. But in the old days, old people always say old days, in the old days, uh, Brian and I would have secret questions. and they weren't direct questions to how good of an economist are you or tell me your economic background. They sounded like softball questions, but they were go no go questions because they taught us about the person's mindset and culture and personality and I think sometimes in business it's easy to get lost that somebody's been an insurance expert for 32 years and not dig into the what kind of person you are by asking basically psychological questions that are softballs that tell you a lot as you go forward.
Yeah, I like the one that you had mentioned to me years ago with do you play a musical instrument? Because that made so much sense to me. If you can see how the economy plays together, it would make sense that somebody that can read a sheet of music would have naturally more that brain that you would need to forecast and work with the different trends and such.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, absolutely. And these days you can expand it to, what do you look for most in an employer? What do you look for most in your immediate supervisor? Um, what good do you do in this world? They want the company to do good. What do you do to contribute back to the world as an individual? If the answer is nothing, then that tells you something about the person, right? It may not fit your culture at all if the culture is geared towards being involved in the community and doing something. So I think there's a softball way of approaching all that. And I do like the music question. And when somebody failed, Brian and I had a cue for each other. The pens would be pointed at the person. And when somebody failed in our eyes, we turned the pen just subtly, like we're playing with it, but so that land across this way, like blocking the person. So
all the little cues.
that's right. That's right. Uh, Stop doing what you shouldn't be doing is a great piece of advice in my mind. And how can you do what you're doing better? And MCA, who you and I were at last in March, does that. And there are a whole host of firms that we have worked with over the years that do that. The biggest difficulty for a lot of firms to engage in that is A, they don't understand it. So a leader who doesn't understand it fears it and is a very slow walker. They don't have the courage to do one of two things. Say, okay, I need a vice president who's in charge of this, or to say, and I did this once at a Vistage group. I said to the Vistage group, if you're no longer willing to take risks, you do not belong as the CEO of that company. And the chair called me up the next week and said, thanks a lot, 3 people quit.
I
But
was just being honest.
that's right. Thought that's what you brought me in here for. But that's the point, though, right? You have to be willing to change. If you're not willing to change, recognize your shortcomings, which everybody knows I'm not a technical whiz. That's why we had Joseph, right? It's
And why we're on take 2 today.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's uh, you have to be able to recognize it in yourself if you're going to make the changes that we were just talking about. And if you're not comfortable not being the smartest person in the room, if you're not comfortable not knowing everything, your leadership ability is really not what it should be in this day and age. That maybe worked when you were $1 million company. It doesn't work if you want to be a 10, 50, $100 million company.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point because you and I talk about that a lot. Surround ourselves with extremely smart people so that way we can have this collective strength and go forward with all these different perspectives and such rather than me needing to always have the answers. It was a group conversation with my marketing team, a group conversation with my sales team, and fully respecting all of the opinions and perspectives that everybody shares with you instead of just hearing it but not really hearing it. Makes a really big difference. Uh, Go ahead.
I was going to say, sure it does, and it brings up a thing that can be lacking in many people, and that is to actually become a listener. A listener is not the same as a hearer, and a lot of people pretend to listen, but they don't really. And people pick up on that eventually and understand they're talking to the blackboard, and lose interest at that point.
100%. Okay, so looking at time and thinking through, so we've been talking about current day, how people are feeling, why they're likely feeling that way. You've given great advice on how they can start looking to adjust things internally to combat some of that. Just curious your thoughts looking further out. into the future because we don't want to just live in the here and the now. What thoughts, like, is it going to stay dark and dismal for the next 4 years, you think? Or do you think that the previous forecasts that we had at our fingertips when we were at ITR still apply? We'll see growth coming through the second half of this decade, just longer term. I'm curious your thoughts.
I think we are going to see growth, but it's a large but. I think there's a pretty good likelihood it'll be less growth than we were anticipating in the past, excuse me, only because of uncertainty. Nations aren't quick to forget. Um, you know, you can't hit somebody with a sledgehammer, then next day go, let's be buds again. They go, yeah, and that diminishes expectations and diminishes some growth potential and investment potential and all the rest of that. Still basically up, and we're going to end the decade bigger, stronger than we are now. More inflation, higher interest rates. We can talk about what to do with that sometime in the future. I think that wraps very soundly around competitive advantages and messaging and all the rest of that as we go forward. So there'll be plenty coming our way. And maybe if we feel bold enough on one of these, Kim, we can talk about what happens if there's a war.
Mm.
And what does that mean?
I think we should. I'm sure it's a question that other people are thinking as well. So I think we should.
Okay,
Yep,
good.
I think that would be great. So moving then, segue into the more solutions for these challenges. We talked about some of the labor things. I know you and I, before starting to record this, we're talking about some of the marketing strategies. I recently posted a blog with the 8 different, just generic, simple things that you can start looking to implement to set yourself apart. Some being just using true competitive advantages, not we're really friendly or we've been in business for 50 years, but a true competitive advantage. And then there are others where the messaging, as you just referenced, empathy, transparency, we're in this together. So acknowledging that there is a pain that exists there, and then how you are helping alleviate said pain, and you want to partner with your clients. It's not transactional. It's a partnership and a relationship. Curious your thoughts on other areas with business strategy, business development. What other areas could we help our listeners with?
Uh, I'm not sure the right wording for it, Kim, but not all industries are going to do equally well going forward. So making sure you have a handle on some agility and some green shoots in other areas so that if the longer term prognosis for your area of expertise is not nearly as strong as to the left or to the right, that you begin moving in to the left and right so that you have a market presence when it's needed. You can't be so solely, and that happens to businesses. I'm a small engine repair person. The only one I repair are Craftsman. Well, when Sears was around, great, and Craftsman is still around, but there are so many other brands, that you have to, if you don't broaden your field and get ready for changes, which I know we talk about being experts, but at the same time, I can be an expert small engine repair person, and obviously we're talking about much bigger companies than that today, but I have to learn how to repair this one and this one if I'm going to survive, if this is going to be going out of business. You don't want to be the person who is a specialist in a Yugo. For those that remember what a Yugo was, it's I'm the number one Yugo salesperson in the country. Fantastic.
So taking that then, and I'm just thinking through some of the advice and tips and insights you've provided me over the years. Some of those industries that will be faring better based on previous conversations. I'm curious if you think that they still will be the healthcare sector, law enforcement, technology, if some pocket, like the pockets of technology. What are those still accurate, and what other ones then would you put on that list for our
Let's take
listeners?
the medical one. Right now, that's flashing yellow as opposed to green because recent announcements of reducing medical medicinal costs by 80%. I mean, that must have a whole lot of people thinking the end of the world is near and tough time for the industry. And I did a hospital association in Texas, and revenue was not their problem. Profits were their problem. And
Mm.
while they're not for profit, you need profit to continue to expand, to buy new equipment, and all the rest of that. Because the reimbursements have been going down, fighting and scrapping for reimbursements, became a very tough game, as well as the hiring of people. Um, so in the medical, it may get tougher, and I just recently saw that besides the prescription reduction in costs, there may be a reduction in the amount of Medicare that's provided by the federal government and Medicaid, Medicaid, not Medicare. But that's still going to impact providers. And so providers need to be careful as to where their specialty is and where their dollars are coming from as they go forward. But in generic terms, my generation is going to be demanding more and more hips, depends, Dr. Scholl's. We're going to, we're going to need it all as we go forward. So it's going to go.
Arthritis cream.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly. Which works almost as well as the vodka, but it's
Well, not quite.
But the defense industry is likely to be doing well. Energy is likely to be doing well. Alternative energy, infrastructure build in this country is likely to be doing well. Water, sewer, that kind of infrastructure, as well as the electricity needs in this country, are going to continue to grow and grow and grow. Um, and I think we're going to find that as we move into the next decade, one of the things that's harder is that in this country, we're not mid-level manufacturers and we're not low-end manufacturers. We do high-end manufacturing. But if Peter Zane's right, and there's good probability he is, then we're going to need to develop mid-level skills and maybe even lower-level manufacturing skills, or else there's nothing for us to produce. And that's going to be an opportunity for a lot of people to get into manufacturing or provide mid-level goods that now are coming from overseas and can no longer come next decade from overseas. It's going to be like, well, the guy who can provide the widget is all of a sudden the ingot, the titanium rod. I mean, that person's a hero and can really help the country and do well and at the same time do good.
Thinking where to transition from that. So great list of industries. Sticking to the name of our podcast, Dad, Growth Playbook. So by definition, our playbook is here are the top things we recommend you do to target that growth. Maybe just a quick summary on the advice. I can start from my end where we said competitive advantages, and we can talk about that and peel that apart even further in a future episode. And then which comes down to your differentiators, quantitative statements, power statements, all of that and their importance in creating a moat around your business as we go through some of these turbulent times. In addition to that, your messaging, being empathetic, transparent, focusing on empowering the customer. If they're feeling vulnerable, how can we help them make them feel more empowered? And then I think the last one, with the labor specifically, I had talked about the core values, mission, vision, your passion, your purpose, making that all very, very clear so that way it can be helpful as you go through your hiring process. From an economic perspective and business strategist from over the decades, what are your thoughts for here are our top pieces to focus on as we exit this episode?
Well, one of the things that can be done is to go to ITR and ask for, later on, you can start now, but it's a little early. Um, what are the key countries as we look into the future so that you can deal internationally? And what are the key industries as we go into the future? We laid off a few today. We could add in alcohol, beverages as we go forward. Entertainment does well because of people staying at home. They need entertainment. The RV industry tanks, but what do you do in your backyard? That type of thing as we go forward. There'll be different things, different industries that can do well, like education. As people lose their jobs in this field, they're going to get retrained into another field. So all of a sudden, people who were on UPS trucks are now becoming LNAs. That type of thing takes retraining. So that's a gigantic field as we go forward. Pets are likely to become a good business too. As we stay home more, pets are popular and they make older people feel good. Your mother and I really love our little dog.
And younger people. My husband and Chloe just got 14 new chickens, so
Oh no! Oh, gee. The
surprise!
price of eggs are coming down.
Yeah.
They bought at the peak of B.
Yeah. It's what happens when she went away for 2 weeks and came home and Frank realized how much he missed her. It became pretty much a yes day, anything you want, Chloe. And that translated into 14 little chickens in my garage right now with no coop outside to put them into when they're big. So
Well, I often say you can never have too many foxes in your backyard, so it's a good choice, especially where you live. You know? Oh well, that'll be fun. And the list will obviously grow as we go forward. Things related to AI, things related to perhaps EVs, perhaps to whatever follows EVs. You know, the economy evolves. Jobs will be lost in some fields and gained in others. So we'll keep our eye on it. We'll keep people apprised. When it comes to education, engineering is certainly, STEM is certainly a good general field for people to be thinking about for the future. Medicine is another one. Uh, there are going to be a lot of high-tech opportunities as we go forward, not in writing software because AI is going to be doing a lot more of that, but there's a lot more to high tech than writing software. So, as a general phrase, I think you're going to find lots of opportunities. I think the person who I'm thinking of a company in Maine, up in Oakland, Maine, and it used to be a used car lot. I remember it because of all the years up there. And I went and drove by it the other day, and it said Kim's Taxi, and it didn't say taxi service. It said Kim's Taxi, and I noticed there's one car there. I thought, not a sustainable business model as we go into the future with Waymo and with, Uber doesn't exist up there yet, but if Uber moves into the area, it's look for the change in technology and follow it and become an expert in it is the moral of that story. Instead of running the last taxi service in town, be on the other end of it all.
And the other thought that came to my mind when you were just talking about that, and I think it goes back to the specialist comment that you made, is being the subject matter expert on your subject and being sure that the marketplace, you can clearly communicate that to the marketplace. That will help set you apart. If you're one of many professional services companies that provide X, how can you clearly show that you are the subject matter expert in that subject? Would be something
Yeah,
to take back to the executive team and say, are we clearly communicating this to the marketplace?
very true. And you know what you and I have noticed over the years, you can be very smart, an expert in your field, and not be a good communicator. You don't have the right phrases. You don't know how to stand up in front of people and deliver the message well. You bore people to death, or you come across as thinking you're smarter than everybody else, or everybody else is dumber than a post. I mean, there's lots of ways to do it wrong, and companies need to focus on doing it right with the personality and charisma. Joe comes to mind, your brother. Uh, in a field that would bore you and I to tears, but I mean, he speaks in front of audiences and builds business and engages in relationships and makes it work in a field that, again, most people would just as soon not know anything about. So, it's,
Which I still find very fascinating as he is based in technology and you would assume that he would be much more introverted and not be the person out on the stage. And that there's me who's been in sales and marketing, so you would consider me to be more extroverted and want to be out there on the stage. And it's the complete opposite. Joe, how about it? At the stage, I am not a professional speaker. I make a great crazy lady behind the scenes, helping businesses run their companies, but I'm not the put me in front of 300 people and present. So it's just funny how you have to know what you're good at. And to our point earlier, surround yourself with people that complement your skills.
yeah, absolutely. And by the way, 300 is a good sized group. I prefer 1,500 myself. So,
Yeah, I'd probably have a panic attack behind the curtain.
well, it used to be a bit scary, but you get past that after a while. If you do it right, you get past that. So,
desensitized, maybe.
Yeah, that'll be another discussion, I suppose, another day, how to be good at presenting what you do to people. And the messaging is certainly very important. And the how-to, maybe we want to do something on the how-to somewhere down the road.
Definitely. Love it. Well, this has been fun. This is a great first episode. Hopefully everybody enjoyed it and found it insightful. Again, as we mentioned earlier, please submit us questions, send us your comments, your thoughts. We'll be actively watching to see what's coming through so that way we can stay engaged with the community, and just really excited to provide this podcast series to the marketplace. Our plan as it stands right now, I think, Dad, we had agreed on every other week, so it's not going to be an every week thing. So stay tuned for 2 weeks from now for our next one.
Absolutely. And is this where we're supposed to say like us on?
Yes, like us. Come, look at you go. Subscribe, like us.
Yeah, all that stuff, right?
Website.
Yeah, that's it. All
I'm
right,
so
great.
proud.
You've been teaching me well over the years. Before we go, I just want to let everybody know something, and this is just a daughter-father thing. I don't know how many years ago, Kim said to me one day, I don't know if you've been there 4 years, 5 years. She said, "Why don't you do something for me, Dad?" I said, "What?" She says, "Don't talk to anybody about product or price. All right, just do what you do, but do not talk to somebody." That's always stuck with me because people will ask me things, and I go, "I'm not allowed to talk about it." And they go, "What?" I go, "Yeah, there are people who are much better at that than I am, you know." So it's kind of a lesson for all of us there. We need to be in a place where we are good at talking about product and price, or else we're just hurting the effort. Some people just know
Yes.
when need to be told. Thank you for telling me.
You're welcome, and I appreciate you listening.
Yeah, it's helped.
It certainly helped us hit our numbers.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
All right, nice to see you. Talk soon.
Yep, good to see you. Bye now.
Bye.